the News Channel 5 network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. If I told you we were going to do a show today on baseball and Inside Politics, you might think we're going to do some off-topic stuff today, but maybe not. As it pertains to Nashville, there's likely to be a lot of news and politics involved in the future of the national pastime in this city. And there's always a lot of history in baseball. We like history on this program, and so we discuss that quite a bit. We also seem to be at a time when the sport of baseball is maybe on the brink of some significant changes, especially for a sport that's always been slow to change and often jealously guards its traditions and records. To discuss all this, our guest today on Inside Politics is Nashville's preeminent baseball historian, Skip Nipper. Skip, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Pat.
The World Series was one of the most interesting ones I think that baseball had in recent years. It went the limit of 7 games. The Washington Nationals won it over the Houston Astros 4-3. The World Championship for the Nationals marked the first time a city in our nation's capital had won the World Series in almost a century. And for a while, nobody seemed to think that was even possible. They also did something almost impossible. The Nationals seemed to unite Washington. Nothing unites Washington these days.
Well, if it did, it didn't last very long, did it? But I want to correct you on one thing. In 1948, the last Negro League World Series, the Grays won it out of against the Birmingham Black Barons, and so there was a World Series championship
and
there.
For the Nationals franchise itself, it was their first because they used to be the Montreal Expos.
Correct.
In recent years, we've had the Red Sox win, the Cubs win, the Nationals have broke their drought for Major League Baseball national championships. It was the first ever that we've seen, again, as we mentioned, for what was originally the Montreal Expos. Is baseball changing to the point where you can go from last to first a lot more quickly than you used to be able to do so?
I think free agency has allowed for that. Free agency and the ballparks are more similar, I think, than they used to be. There are less idiosyncrasies to different ballparks besides Wrigley and Fenway in Boston.
So there's hope for Cleveland and San Diego and Colorado, the other teams that have been struggling to not only get back to the World Series, but to win it.
I think so. The only team that hasn't been in the World Series, I believe, is Tampa Bay, but the others have been in the World Series, just haven't won it.
Now, we also had something happen in this World Series that I'm not sure if it's rare or not, but none of the home teams won. All 7 games were won by the visiting team. Had that ever happened in a World Series history?
It had never happened before, and I think it helped to draw people's attention to the World Series this year like never before.
Why is the home field advantage not that important or not that dominant in baseball?
Well, it's just that all the fields have become either artificial or semi-artificial, with whatever way you want to call it. The ballpark, my dad always said all the ballparks should have the same outfield distances. They should all be the same and have the flavor of the ballpark be different in the stands.
But then you wouldn't have Pesky's pole, you wouldn't have the other short porches, and they used to have flag poles in the middle of center field that were in play.
Exactly. Sulphurdale here in Nashville did too.
And you had the dump at Sulphurdale.
They had the dump at Sulphurdale.
Let's talk about Nashville. Our city continues to rank very high on the list of potential cities that might either get a relocated franchise or a new franchise. What is it about Nashville that makes it more? It didn't used to be anywhere close to being that. There's been no really active effort in Nashville until recently to go after a franchise. So how do we get so high on the list?
I think just the dynamics of the city. It's a growth city. It's people still moving in. They're not moving out. If they are moving out, they're moving out into the surrounding counties. And I think that's part of the makes more of the possibility for Major League Baseball to come here because we have a large county area that will draw from population.
Are we talking about something happening within the next 5 years, or is it a longer stretch before we get into that situation?
Probably going to be 5 years. I think 2024 is what the Music City baseball people have in mind is when expansion will take place.
Now, the first group that came in here maybe about a year or so ago, all seem to be out-of-town people that nobody here, at least in the political setting, seemed to know much about them. They've enlisted you, they've enlisted Tim Corbett and some other people to get involved. What is your role with trying to help the Major League group come here?
My role is in an area that I love the best, and that's the baseball history. John Lohr called me about a year ago and was asking me some questions, particularly interested in the Nashville Stars, which was a black baseball team here in the 50s. And I've been able to trace some of that history back a little further than that. Not ready to really kind of tie that together, but we will one day. But he felt like if he's going to try to bring Major League Baseball to Nashville, he certainly needed to know the history of baseball.
The situation here locally with the political establishment, they haven't been hostile, but they haven't exactly been embracing on this. They've kind of been, well, we're okay as long as you guys pay for it. So it's a pretty strong possibility, it appears, that if there's a new stadium here, and we'll talk about whether that's needed or not, it's going to have to be privately funded. Does your group have those kind of pockets?
Well, let me first say that I'm only a kind of a party to the group. As a historian, I'm not the owner.
You wouldn't be one of the owners.
Not one of the. I don't know the nuts and bolts of what's going on behind the scenes that we know. I'm sure the political segment of that is a very important part, and I'm sure. Well, first of all, we have to remember, if we're talking 5 years down the road, we can't use today's terms, today's political atmosphere, and a lot of other things to compare to what's going to happen then.
In all likelihood, can they use the existing sound stadium, or is it going to have to be a brand new facility somewhere else?
It'll have to be a new facility, and I don't think that when the Sounds Park was built, that it was built to include expansion to a major league park. I think Memphis
that's what
was.
They said at the time. What is it about that it couldn't be expanded to make it up to major league?
I think it had to be built from the ground up. It had to be set for the structure to be built, or for additions to be made at the time. And when that wasn't done, then.
Now, what happens to the Sounds if there's a major league team? Obviously, they're probably not going to continue to play here. They'd relocate someplace else. But the Sounds owners own the rights to this area for baseball. So how would that be handled? Would there have to be some kind of payment to help them move?
I'm
or
sure
pay
there'd
them
be
off
some negotiation in that regard, but he would be free to move his club wherever he could move it, or Mr. Ward I'm speaking of, or the owners could move it where they would felt like, or could sell it to another.
What's been the history of that in baseball? I know that it would change in 5 years, but what has been the going rate for buying out minor league teams?
It used to be $1 million, but today I don't know what that is.
It'd probably be a lot more. I mean, franchises are a lot more expensive these days.
I would think that the Sounds franchise is worth more than $1 million.
There have been a lot of new pretty drawings that have come out about what a new Major League Baseball team would look like over on the East Bank. It looks like it's going to be in the parking lot currently of the Titan Stadium, but that could be problematic because the revenue from that parking lot is being used to pay off the stadium right now. What is the status of the Titans? Have they talked to the Titans? Are they going to be supportive of bringing Major League Baseball here?
Knowing John Lohr, and I think he's the guy that can drive this and make it happen, I'm sure he's talked to everybody that he needs to talk to make sure that happens. But I do want to say, he told me that concept that we see on their website is just that, a concept. And it was something that was a key part of getting the message out. And I'm positive that they're looking at other locations as well. I can't believe that would just be the one that they were after. That's the one I like the best. I think it fits the footprint of the Nissan Stadium and Lower Broadway across the street. I think it just, across the river, I think it just makes all kinds of sense.
Skip Nipper is our guest. He's a Nashville baseball historian. We're talking about the chances of Major League Baseball coming to Nashville in the next few years. Back to continue our conversation about that and other things related to baseball after this break.